Are we ready to go?
I think so.
All right.
Are we set? Are we on?
Yes.
Hello.
All right, you want to start the meeting?
Let's go ahead and we'll call the meeting to order. And to begin with, we'll start with a roll call of Aviation Advisory Board members. So if everybody, I'll call your name and you can say that you are present. So Richard Haig, I am present. Dan Bourne.
Here.
Monte Soukup.
Here.
Mike Kinney, Mike Kelly.
Present.
Present. Don Kinney.
Yep, I'm here.
Is that everybody that's on the board that's present?
Yep.
Okay.
All right,
So
I'm
we'll-
going to go into little instructions.
Okay.
In mind.
I don't. Amanda's going to give us Zoom instructions for an official meeting.
All right, since this is our first meeting, we'll just have a few reminders and kind of instructions on how we'll facilitate this via Zoom. You know, hopefully this is the only one of these by Zoom, but we will see. So I want to provide a few reminders to ensure the provisions of the Kansas Open Meetings Act are met. Advisory board members, or anybody who speaks, you must state your name and title each time you speak. All motions will need to be clearly stated. After a motion is made and seconded, the chair will call on board members individually to provide their votes. Richard, you'll have to announce then whether the motion carried in the count of the vote. We have one city staff on. We're supposed to have, we might have one more joining us here. Oh, there's more people. Hold on, let me let other people in the meeting. Sorry, I'm trying to administer this and present, so you guys are going to have to bear with me. We're adding more here. All right, I think everybody's on now. Okay, so I'll continue with the instructions here. Members of the public are allowed to speak on agenda items. Richard will let you know when the appropriate time for any non-board members to provide comment on items. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and public access channel 25. During the meeting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found on the lower left-hand side of the Zoom menu next to the video icon. When you are muted, a red line will appear over the icon. Muting your microphone during the meeting will make it easier for everyone to hear. You'll just have to remember to unmute if and when you want to speak. In some cases, I may mute or unmute people as needed. Each time you speak, please remember to state your name and title for the benefit of those listening remotely. In the menu, you can also turn your camera on or off by clicking the video icon. For the purposes of this public meeting, please keep your video on during the meeting. If you're participating by phone, you can click *6 to unmute your phone. For those using Zoom, somewhere on your screen you will see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view shows the active speaker, gallery view tiles all meeting participants. So those are our Zoom instructions. I'll hand it back over to you if you want to go to...
Okay. We'll start with the agenda. And number one on the agenda is to approve the minutes from our December 4th meeting, which was our last official meeting. We did have one get-together in between. We didn't have a quorum. So has everybody reviewed those, and are there any changes that any board members would like made to the minutes?
This is Michael Kelly, member, and my name is misspelled a few times in the draft minutes, and I provided that input to Amanda so she knows where the corrections need to be made. Thank you.
Any other changes? Any changes the public would like to have made to the minutes? Okay, with the corrections of the spelling of Michael Kelly's name, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Monte Soukup for KU. I move that we approve the minutes with the appropriate corrections.
Michael Kelly, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. So we can have a vote. Dan?
Approve.
Monte?
Approve.
Mike? Michael Kelly?
Approve. Mike Kelly.
Don? Don Kinney?
Approved.
And myself, Richard Haig, Chairman, I approve, so it passes 5-0. Next on the agenda is to receive public comment. If any of the public would like to make a comment about issues dealing with the airport or aviation in Lawrence, Kansas, we can accept your comments at this time.
Nothing from me.
Okay. With no other comments, we'll move on to the third agenda item, which is the update on Runway 1533 Rehab project. So Amanda, is that going to you or to
Yep.
Rick?
That will go to me. All right, hello, everyone. Amanda Saheen, engineer with MSO and airport manager. Before I start this, I did want to say that we've got, I think, one person watching by TV at least, and we have one person here on the Zoom who have both applied to be on the Aviation Advisory Board. So they are waiting the mayor to review their packets, and that's Clancy Maloney here on the Zoom meeting, and then
Chris Coleman.
Chris Coleman. I'm spacing his name right now because it's not right in front of me. Chris Coleman is watching, I believe, on TV right now, just so that they can kind of follow what the board does and what's going on, and hopefully we will be able to welcome them to the board soon. Okay, wanted to provide an update since it's been a while, and actually I think this is the first official meeting that I'm at since the January one. We didn't have the quorum. But we've got the runway project that's coming up here this summer. I know that there's a lot that's happened since you guys probably heard about the project last. The project, since I think the last time you guys have met, it's been determined that it'll be a full-depth reclamation project. They're going to also install new edge drains. It's considered a major rehabilitation. It's got an expected structural life of 20 years. There is obviously every few years some need for maintenance on it, but should last for quite a while. We did have a meeting with the tenants, since we didn't have an advisory board meeting and it was kind of a short timeline that we had to get this meeting done. We did not have it with the advisory board, but we did invite both the chair and vice chair attended from the advisory board with the tenants on February 26th, the business tenants at the airport who rent kind of the larger spaces out there. And we talked about two options, phasing or not phasing the project. So not phasing the project was really what we called option one, and that was an approximate 6-week timeline of the entire airport being shut down, both runways. The benefits to that option are there's lower cost and less exposure to potential weather delays, and safety-wise, there's probably some benefits there too. Option two was to phase the project and leave runway 119 open while the bulk of the work was completed on the other runway, then close both runways while the intersection work is completed. The total project duration for that's 8 weeks, but we'll be able to keep 119 open for 5 weeks of that. So the whole airport will only be closed for approximately 3 weeks. Out of all the tenants, pretty much everyone favored option two except for KU, which is understandable. They can't fly on that out of that shorter runway. They did, though, understand that, you know, that it probably made more sense for other people. So staff directed ADG at that point to proceed with that option. And so that is the way the plans were developed and the project was bid. The bid documents were advertised on April 1st. We had a pre-bid meeting where there was 4 prospective prime bidders. The bids were open on April 28th. There was one bidder, and it's Bettis Asphalt and Construction. The bid amount was $3,672,693.45, which was slightly above the engineer's estimate. Due to that bid being over the estimate and also being only one bidder, ADG examined the bid in detail and was able to identify a $10,000 overestimation by Bettis due to a misinterpretation of specification, so therefore it will be $10,000 less than that number I read. On June 11th, the city submitted the grant application to the FAA with a recommendation to award the contract to Bettis Asphalt and Construction. The It's currently with the FAA. I spoke to them yesterday, and they obviously got, I think Todd got 14 applications last week. So he's working through them, and we should hear soon that it's moving on from his desk, hopefully. And so I'm anticipating that we will get the grant paperwork in early July from the FAA. We will need to take that to City Commission for acceptance of the grant and award of that contract so that they can start. Here, I'll go to the schedule here in a little bit. So the grant amount, the FAA Go letter that was given to us in October had us funding the 10% match, which was about $403,000. But in April, we were notified that the CARES Act increased the federal share of 2020 AIP projects to 100%. So that's good news. However, given the total projected amount for the project, we are $65,000 over the anticipated project cost in the FAA Go letter. We do not have confirmation from the FAA whether they can increase the 2020 grant amount or whether this will need to be a multi-year grant, with us basically having to front that $65,000 until next year and getting reimbursement for that. I have attached the project detail, project budget summary if anybody's interested on kind of how we got to those numbers. It's sounding like, when I talked to him yesterday, they're hopeful that they've got some other airports that maybe won't be using all their funds and that they can hopefully fund it all this year and we won't have to do that, but they can't confirm that at this point. The project...
Amanda, this is Mike Kelly.
Go ahead.
Because the city's no longer being asked for the $400,000, I'm sure the finance director was very pleased to hear that, and that $400,000 will be directed elsewhere in the city's budget. But I'm wondering if we shouldn't ask to reserve $65,000 in the event that the FAA cannot come back on that $65,000. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so that money's the airport's money. That money for the capital projects is actually from the airport funds. So it actually won't be redirected to other needs. So as of right now, we still have the $400,000. We've actually spent a couple $100,000 of that on ADG's contract, which we can't get reimbursement for until we get the grant. So it kind of, goes out, comes back in kind of thing. So that number that we actually have in the account, I guess, is in flux at all times. But it really will roll forward into future years. And so my guess is, with the conversations we've been having around the budget at the airport, I think next year we may get less from general fund transfer for the operations at the airport, just with what's going on with the city budget. My guess is that we're going to get a little less of a transfer from general fund, and we will have to eat into this savings a little bit for the operations at the airport next year. Then we would like to keep as much as we can in reserve, because they've right now got us, not next year but the year after, scheduled for, I believe, taxiways, and we'll need the match for that. So the goal is that this stays in the reserve as much as possible, and that we use it in future years. Or if we get a KDOT grant, we might want to use that for a match for a KDOT grant or something like that. So should still stay at the airport.
This is Michael Kelly. Amanda, thank you for that detailed explanation. I just want to make the point, and I hope that the other members of the board will agree, that we don't want this multi-million-dollar project to fail because we can't scrape up $65,000. And I just hope that if we need to move quickly with the city commission and get authority to use that $65,000 to save the project, if that's necessary, that we are prepared to do that. I don't want this to go away for a just over 1% shortfall in the funding.
Yeah, this is Amanda Saheen. I think all of the city staff is on the same page with that. I mean, even if we have to spend $65,000, that's much less than we anticipated spending, and we will get it back next year if that's the case. But hopefully, we don't even need to go that route, and we'll just keep this money in the reserve, the airport reserve, and we'll be able to use it in future years. The project schedule, just briefly, we don't have anything from Bettis yet detailed. They do have 42 working days to complete the project before they get into liquidated damages. The project was anticipated to begin approximately August 1st. We really originally were thinking that we were doing August 1st because of the Oshkosh fly in July, but I'm guessing, I haven't heard, but I'm assuming that that's not, I don't know if that's happening, it's not canceled. Yeah, so I think that's not an issue at this point. And also, there was a push from KU, I know they have a big push for basketball recruiting in July, which don't know how that's faring, but guessing that's probably not as big of a deal anymore either. So we may have some conversations about starting them a couple weeks earlier if we're able to get the grant, get it through City Commission, they've got to get all their bonds in. I mean, there's a process, so it may or may not be ready to start any sooner than August 1st. So I think August 1st is the goal, and if we can get them started out there a week or two sooner, we will. And then they have 42 working days from that point. So once we get a little closer, we should get a more detailed schedule that we can hopefully provide to the board. So that is it on that item. If you guys have any questions?
Thank you.
And
This is Monte.
Amanda, this is Don Kinney. I have a question for you.
Okay, go ahead, Don.
So that's the 42 working days, and I assume that's exclusive of any weather delays or anything like that. And those weather delays are predetermined. In other words, it's rain or whatever, and they say that's a rush day. And just so that this doesn't string out, because we certainly got a lot of people waiting for this airport to be done, and I want somebody going, there's it's not a working day. So I'm assuming that's all spelled out with that, correct?
Yeah, ADG will be out there daily. I believe the way it's worded is if they work at least 6 hours, that it's considered a working day towards their contract. And so I'm certain that ADG will be on them and not allowing them to not work on good weather days. Obviously, we've got, I don't know, I assume they're going to work Saturdays. We don't know that yet. They may work 5 days a week. They may work 6 days a week. Obviously, we're not requiring a 6-day schedule. Would you like to add anything?
Yes, just to reinforce, at the last meeting, we talked briefly, and also,
Oh, say your name.
But-
I'm not good about that.
I was going to get him at
What?
the end.
Say your name. I'm not good about that myself.
Rick Bryant from
Right.
ADG speaking.
Rick Bryant. Bettis's plan is to work the first couple weeks, Rick Bryant again, work the first couple weeks at 8 to 10, maybe 12-hour shifts on the grinding of the asphalt as part of the in situ, which means that the asphalt's going to remain in place on the links of the runway north and south of the around the intersection. And then when we get to the point where traditional paving and asphalt application of the 4-inch final grade, then we'll probably scale back to normal 8-hour shifts. So again, everything's in flux. Bettis has always indicated a willingness to start early, but as Amanda said, we have a process that we have to follow, and nobody's going to move one piece of equipment or one footstep of an employee until the grant is signed, sealed, and delivered by the FAA to the city and they've accepted. So we may be right at August 1st. And then we also have a process for pre-construction process with safety procedures, notifying some of the major tenants to communicate with them. And then also, if you're not aware, we have 2 major natural gas transmission lines that bisect the airfield from west to east, and they run right underneath the primary runway. So we will have conversations with both those pipeline representatives to make sure that we got everything taken care of. When we did the fence project in 2017, they were out there every day. We were around their pipeline. So a lot of hurdles to get through, but yes, ADG staff, myself, and we have a construction inspector that we bring up from Jackson, Mississippi in our office up there. We'll be out there all 10 hours of the day the first couple weeks, so just look for our pup tent somewhere out along the runway.
Amanda, this is Monte, Soukup with KU. I just have one other question. I was wondering if there was any indication as to why out of 4 or 5 bidders that expressed interest, we only got 1 bid.
So ADG looked into that. I don't know if you're in the loop with that or if that was more Chuck.
Probably more Chuck.
Okay.
But at the time of the pre-construction meeting, there was pretty active participation. We had a Zoom conference, and then after that meeting, I conducted an on-field tour for those contractors that were interested. Bettis was the only one. And my best guess is Bettis is an extremely price competitive firm, and they also have completed airport projects in Topeka, at Topeka Regional and Billard Airport over the last couple years. So they're strong in the airfield industry. And so I guess the others just didn't want to play ball and, go through the exercise of putting in a bid that wasn't going to be competitive.
Yeah, I know there was some detail in one of the letters to the FAA, but there were so many pages, I don't remember exactly what it said about, I know one of them they weren't able to contact, and then I think the other two, it really just came down to the schedule and their workload too. So I think it's probably a little bit of what Rick's saying on top of that. I do know that Bettis is currently working out in Topeka, doing some paving out there at one of the airports, I'm not sure which one. So they are very familiar at least, so I think we do have a good contractor.
Yep.
We were comfortable.
Yeah, my
bidder.
experience with Bettis has been very positive in other types of projects, so I'm not concerned about them. I was just curious about the competition.
Yep. This is Rick again. For future knowledge, board members, when you have an FAA-sponsored project and you only have one bidder, try to avoid that because the extra paperwork and scrutiny is just horrendous. I mean, they have put poor Bettis through a fine-tooth comb, and we'll call it the misinterpretation, was actually the origins came from the FAA because of a change in quality control standards that they're implementing beginning this year. And there was a little confusion over how many samples needed to be pulled and the type of that. And so Chuck Kellerman, our president, in Denver, worked with the pricing people at Bettis to shave off $10,000, and I'm confident that the FAA will probably find that extra $67,000 and make it 100% whole this year, which they are doing pretty much across the board with all the projects that are getting funded. So it's a good thing. This is a great opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity for the airport to have a 100% funded project.
This is Richard, Chairman Richard Haig, and is there any other public comment or questions?
This is Ron Renz with Gutworks and Alligator. Two questions. When we get to do the intersection of the runway, do we think that's going to be at a planned time, or are we going to look for a potentially 3-week good weather window that we could do that so that it might move around, or do we know yet on that?
This is Amanda Saheen. I would assume it's going to be at the end of the project. I think once they get other parts of the runway open, they're going to focus on that until they get that overlay done. I don't think they're going to want to jump around and potentially go do the intersection. So my guess is that they would do 5 weeks of the other parts, and then the last 3 weeks will likely be when that occurs. It may shift here and there as we have weather happens, and we're probably going to ask them to not shut it down if there's one good day and a week of rain after that. I would assume at that point we would talk to them and say, hey, we won't count this as a working day, push it 8 days past this rain and start. So we'll try to keep an eye on that. At a certain point, the weather is what it is, and but we're going to be cognizant of that and try to keep the airport completely closed for as short of a time as possible.
Yeah, good. I have one other question, Ron Renz again. On the safety mitigation, is there anything special that we need to be aware of or make Lifestar aware of? Because they're going to be able to operate during all of the time, and the construction crews just need to be aware of that. And so I assume that's in the safety mitigation plan, but I just want to make sure that it is.
This is Rick Bryant again. Ron, safety management system will be part of the pre-construction outline, and again, Lifestar and their crew will be part of that conversation. There will probably be a standing NOTAM for the 6 weeks of the construction period, just to advise that the runway 1533 is shut down and that there will be construction vehicles driving up and down taxiway A and on 1533 as it's being rehabbed. Rest of the airfield, will be active as always, so I don't anticipate any issues where Lifestar is going to be impacted, but as you know with these situations, we're going to be in constant contact with all the major players and the T-Hangar tenants and let them know what's going on so we operate in a safe manner.
Yeah, there was no question that that's going to be safe. I just wanted to make sure that was part of the safety plan, and I think you answered that affirmatively. Great. Thanks, Rick.
No problem.
This is Mike Kelly. I heard the phrase completely closed before Ron made his interjection. And in any public communication we go forward with the newspaper, whatever, I think we need to emphasize that the Lifestar will remain in operation. And the fact that we're doing safety monitoring for the gas pipelines, I think that needs to be emphasized in any public communication going forward. And we need to avoid the phrase completely closed. Closed to fixed wing operations, perhaps. Those that are in the aviation community know what that means, but since we're going to have rotary wing operations available, we need to not use the term completely closed.
This is Amanda. That's a good point. Thank you.
This is Richard Haig, Chairman again. Are there any other questions for Amanda or Rick Bryant on this issue before we move forward, public or board members? Okay, thank you guys. The next item agenda is to discuss the name change to Lawrence Regional Airport away from the Lawrence Memorial Airport or Lawrence Municipal Airport. And the main reason for this change, or what was driving this change, is by the federal standards and the state standards. The airport meets the criteria of a regional airport above the regular municipal standard of airports. So by changing it, it gets the distinction that people will recognize it for the activity that it can accommodate and for the activity that is actually happening at the airport at this time. So that was the push for it. If anybody has input, we welcome anything they have to say or to contribute to this. I think Rick Bryant from ADG could actually fill us in on what it takes with the FAA and what the city has to do in order to make this change happen, besides just changing the lettering on the sign in front of the airport.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick Bryant again. Back in 2014, in way of background, the FAA conducted what was called an asset study, which was a review of all general aviation airports across the United States. And since the beginning of time, when airports were first originated and operating across the country, they have grown and their mission has changed over the years, but the categorization of airports by the FAA has not. So they went through and conducted this nationwide study of all the different airports by state and created a new tier system of naming airports. As part of that, Lawrence was designated a regional airport. On the GA side, there is a national designation, a regional designation, a local designation, and a basic. And if you don't fall under the basic, you have fallen out of the NIPIAS and are ineligible for federal funding. And there are a few in Kansas that sadly met that criteria. The criteria for becoming a regional airport is the airport demonstrates a high level of activity with some jets and multi-engine propeller aircraft averaging about 90 based aircraft, including 3 jets, and having several categories fulfilled in functions that serve the public interest, such as emergency preparedness and response, like life flight, law enforcement, aerial firefighting, community, and then another category is critical community access, air charter services, and then we move on down to other categories that are different and varied, and I won't bore you with going through all that because it's multi-bulleted. But the important thing is there are 11 regional airports in the state of Kansas under this designation now, and Lawrence is one of them, and many airports have changed their name officially to take advantage of the market presence by becoming quote-unquote a regional airport, such as Dodge City Regional Airport, Garden City Regional Airport, Hayes Regional Airport. So it adds significance to the market presence, but it also indicates that we are not a Kansas-based airport. We are crossing state lines. We are having market impact, East Coast, West Coast, Canadian border, Mexican border, and a limited number of international flights. It's something that I have advocated for the last several years since this designation has popped up, and I believe it's great for business and will allow us to further capitalize and grow the airport with operations, business, and revenue to help sustain the airport. That's a brief background, and I can answer any questions you may have.
This is Ron Renz. I'm sure somebody said, but I can't remember, what's the proposed new name of the airport?
Lawrence Regional Airport.
Is it appropriate for me to ask a couple of questions at this point?
Definitely.
Just state your name, please.
Clancy Maloney. Do we have 90 based aircraft at Lawrence?
This is Rick again. No, we do not.
Okay, is that one of the thresholds?
It is a recommended threshold, but
Okay.
doesn't have to be.
And-
By contrast, the Augusta Airport, just outside of Wichita, has 120 based aircraft, and they are considered a local airport under this criteria.
Is it still grass?
No, they're
No,
concrete.
not quite yet.
They're still concrete.
And this, you were talking about international. Do we have customs capability here?
No, we do not. This is Rick again. No, we do not. If a aircraft has a flight plan coming from overseas, they will land in Bangor, Maine, and take advantage of the first available customs spot there. Or if they're coming in from the West Coast or from the South, they'll use the appropriate customs facilities there as their first stop, and then they will come to Lawrence. And then on their departure, there will be the transit pilot will have a manifest of passengers, and then they will just take off and go straight across the pond to their next destination and not require customs. We researched it once, what it would cost to have a local customs office, and it would be in excess of 6 figures annually to have a spot in a holding area and staff to take care of that. The closest is over at Kansas City International, obviously, for them to take care of customs.
Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
Clancy, when we had this is Richard Haig, the chair, when we had the president of Columbia come through, he landed his airliner to clear customs at KCI and then flew into Lawrence. And his departure from Lawrence was back to overseas. And we have a number of private jets that come in that their next destination leaving Lawrence Airport is, someone was Kuwait City and different international destinations. So leaving Lawrence, they don't have to clear any customs and go straight over.
This is Clancy again. Thanks. I'd been at an airport where it was on call from a nearby airport, and I just wondered if that was the arrangement or not. So thanks.
This is Rick again. Lloyd, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Lloyd Hetrick.
Am I correct in saying ballpark figure is currently we have maybe 3 to 5 on average a year of what we consider international flights arriving at Lawrence?
Well, we've conducted a number of them just with our aircraft, but we can't do it like
Losing Lloyd.
we can't get customs here. So we've been dropping them to come in from close.
Losing you, Lloyd.
Yeah.
Audio. This is the problem with.
We've had those.
Yeah, we're not.
Okay. This is Rick. Thanks, Lloyd.
I got good.
Just hold up your number of fingers how many flights we get a year.
We can't hear you, Lloyd. You're cutting in and out.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, we heard that.
Yeah.
This is Ron Renz with Gutworks and Alligator. If we had customs, I myself would do about 4 international flights a year. We regularly go to Canada, and we usually leave from here and go to Canada directly nonstop, but we always have to stop somewhere coming back. My gut feel is, and I think Lloyd would correct it, if we would have 6 or 8 customs flights a year at the airport, I think we'd be doing very good, and it's just not worth the expense of doing that. Although it would be convenient, I would like it, but I don't think it's realistic.
I'm not getting reception.
Well, Ron, this is Rick again. You can self-fund that, We'd be happy to put it out there.
Probably isn't going to happen, Rick.
This is Amanda. I think my point too of having this on here was, I think at some point we'll want to, if this is something we want to move forward with, maybe at the next meeting, we'd want to actually put it on for a vote. So then it could go to city commission to act on before we made any application, I assume, to the FAA. Would that be the is it like an application to change that with the FAA?
Yes, this is Rick, yes. It's just strictly a paperwork change to change the name so that they can change their records and change their sectional maps and whatnot. And then the cost to the city is virtually non-existent. You'd have to change Chapter 2 of the city ordinances where it recognizes the Lawrence Municipal Airport and any other files that are named as such, but the cost is pretty low. And Hutchinson Airport even went through the expense and spent $2,000 to create a new logo and new marketing literature for the airport several years ago, that I helped them work on that. And so they've capitalized on this quite a bit. The other airports pretty much are commercial service, so they have some sort of brand identity. But with all the things that are happening at this moment out at the airport, this would be a pretty wise expense and investment to help maintain and develop that exposure for our brand even further.
This is Richard Haig, Chair. Oh, go ahead, Monte. Go ahead, Monte.
This Monte Soukup KU. I just was curious, are there downsides to doing this other than maybe the cost of changing some signage and logo or whatever?
Monte, this is Rick. There's no downside. We can leave this alone for as long as we want. But with all the activity that's going on out at the airport and the growth that we're seeing, it just puts us on a bigger stage. And we're already there technically with the FAA, which I think maybe you might recall, I've always talked about activity-based funding as a theory that the FAA is throwing out. This asset study starts to back that up even more. So where we're supposed to have 90, and we're right now at 50 to 60 aircraft based at the airport, moving towards 90, then puts us in a bigger stage. But we're already there, so there's no downside. It's just, I think it's a good marketing tool, and it's a pretty inexpensive tool.
This is Richard Haig, Chair. The one challenge would be for the city, if you remember when they went from Public Works to MSO, would be making sure all the wording and all the city documents would be changed from Lawrence Municipal Airport to Lawrence Regional Airport, and just going through all the paperwork and then getting those changes through the city commissioner, city manager's approval would be the big challenge to the city.
Yeah, this is Amanda Seen. I'm not sure we could guarantee a timeline on it, but if this is something that the board wanted to do, I think it's something that we could work on. It might be, hey, we'll get this done in the next 6 months, or maybe it's 8 months, because there's obviously a lot going on all over the city right now. But I think too, it was just really, we don't want to do any of that if the board doesn't have an interest in making this change. So.
This is Ron Renz from Gutworks and Alligator. I like the change to a regional airport. It as Rick says, from a business marketing standpoint, and I think Lloyd would agree as well, from a business marketing standpoint, it's just better to be a regional than a municipal. Municipal just implies small, little, not capable, whereas regional implies more capability, more assets, more ability, more services, and that's really a good thing, not just for the businesses at the airport, but for the city and the county and the region around as well. I think just from an overall marketing standpoint, it would be a really, really good thing. I don't think we ought to break our back doing it timely, but I think it's something that we ought to push for.
Lloyd Hetrick, hopefully you can hear me now. I emphasize what Ron's saying. It wouldn't be, it just makes all the sense in the world to try to do it from a marketing standpoint. I also like to see maybe follow up with a sign out by the road that kind of emphasize that regional airport as well. But we've been at this for so many years that I don't feel like it needs to be pushed right away, but I would like to think we could work that way.
Yeah. So Richard, Chair, is any other comments on this, on the sign?
Now, this is Mike Kelly. I want to thank Ron for his comments and Lloyd for his comments on this. I'm in favor of changing it to regional. I think the most important regional aspect of what the airport does is the Lifestar. That isn't just for Lawrence and Douglas County, that's for anywhere in their service area, which goes beyond Lawrence and Douglas County. And that's a regional benefit for everyone that's within range of its aircraft. So I think we need to go forward with it at the appropriate time. If we need to vote on it tonight, I'm in favor of that. If the chairman wants to do it some other time, I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah. This is Richard Haig, Chair. Well, I think tonight was to discuss it and open the discussion and thought process. And I think at future meetings that what we should address is making a plan to move forward, to present it to the city, and also present to the city what steps it's going to take with the FAA and other documents to make this happen, so we can give them a complete package when we present it to them. So any other discussion on the sign? Okay. This is Richard Haig, Chair again, and we'll move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is update on the development projects with the Hetrick Aviation hangar number 2.
This is Amanda Saheen. I'll let Lloyd here speak if he wants to here in a minute, but I just wanted to give an update from the city's perspective. I believe ADG has submitted the most recent site plan to the FAA, so waiting on that. Maybe in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we're hoping is what I'm hearing from Dana. But you know, so there's that. I'll let Rick speak in a second here. We also are waiting, I believe, another iteration of the site plan to be submitted to the city to address some issues that fire and things. It got through Planning Commission. It's got approval there, but there was some outstanding conditions on that approval that had to be addressed with the site plan. And so I believe that's kind of back in Hetrick's court to get that site plan resubmitted with all of those conditions met. So I think it's a little bit in FAA's court, it's a little bit in Lloyd's court, and once all that comes together, hopefully we can move forward with the project. But did you want to add something on that, Rick?
Well, this is Rick again. The airspace study is the issue that's slowing us down the most. They have to take care of the coordinates that are off the site plan and then factor that into the airspace around the airport. And for some reason, we got a letter last week that they wanted additional data points off of the site plan, which we don't know why, but they asking for it, and then they said they're going to include these new data points, and then we're hopeful that they'll get this done fairly soon. So that's the delay in that right now, is just the airspace study, which is part of the 7460-1 notice of intent to construct. It's so I apologize, Lloyd, for the delay, but you know, we're staying on top of it as quickly as we can.
Okay. Yeah, I think I understand if, Amanda, if what you're saying is right, it's, land plan may be addressing some of those issues back to city staff, but as far as we're concerned, we're ready to go. We got a full house on the Hangar 1, and we got several more wanting to move. So, it takes time. We understand that. We've been down that road. Our biggest concern right now is going to be the fundings, getting the taxi lane to the hangar. So I think that probably would be the biggest address coming forward is how do we get our airplanes to the hangar? But other than that, we're ready to get the building ordered just as soon as we can get everything lined up. And I know we were disappointed we didn't get the funding through KDOT, but somehow we're going to have to work something with the city to get that funding coming for for that taxi lane. That's just going to have to be addressed so we can keep moving forward, I guess. I don't know if some of that funding that we had addressed for the runway overlay could be addressed that way. Another option, not preferred, but would be as if we were to fund some of it or part of it, and then we just take it out in future rent or something. But that's probably the biggest drawback on our end, I think. FAA shouldn't be an issue, obviously, and I'm assuming we sure can get the city staff addressed with the land plan on the site plan, or at least that's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Amanda Saheen on the funding. That's really kind of even above my level. I've reached out to the city manager's office and told them we do need to start having conversations, Lloyd, about we have to come to an agreement out there for the ground lease, and those conversations can be had in that discussion. So I'm waiting on the city manager's office to let me know who they're going to have involved, kind of leading that discussion from the city perspective. And so I'm sure we'll be getting in touch with it soon to start having those conversations now that we've got the kind of the footprint of the building and everything set. We know the square footage. So that'll be something upcoming.
Okay, great.
Any public questions, comments, any other board members' questions or comments? This is Richard Haig, Chairman. Okay. We'll move on to item number 6, which is discuss grant opportunities with the Kansas Airport Improvement Program, CARES.
This is Amanda Saheen. I just wanted to do kind of a quick update on a couple of grant opportunities that are maybe out there that we already have been notified we've received, I guess. So the Kansas Airport Improvement Program was something that there was 2 applications submitted last year. Neither were successful. One was the taxi lane that Lloyd's referring to. The other one was the T-Hangar taxi lanes, I believe. Those were not successful. I believe we're going to try to this year really put a lot into that, the T-Hangar taxi lane application. That's what we would recommend as probably the biggest need out there that we don't feel confident we can get FAA funding on. I had a complaint actually from a T-Hangar tenant a couple weeks ago about a big crack in front of their hangar that was about 5 inches wide and over 12 inches deep, and they said their front wheel of their aircraft was actually able to fit in it. So they were having to turn off their aircraft, push it over that, and then get back in. So I was able to get our field crews out there, went and took a look. I was able to get our field crews out there within a couple days. They put just some cold patch. It's a Band-Aid. We looked at a couple areas that really needed that immediate attention so we don't get any damage out there of any of the aircraft. But what they did is a very short-term Band-Aid. It's not something that's going to last forever, and there's a lot more need out there. So at some point, we've got to put some money into this, and I'd really not like us to fund 100% of it. So I think we need to really choose one project that we're going to put a big effort into and find out how we can maybe market it to KDOT to be able to see if we can be successful in that. So that's my recommendation, is that for that grant that we apply for the T-Hangar taxi lanes, and see if that's something we can be successful with. There's a big drainage issue there in front of Eurotech that we've got to deal with. There's probably significant asphalt patching that needs to happen because some of those cracks are all the way through the pavement. So it's not going to be cheap if it's something that we have to do with the airport money. So I kind of wanted to know your guys' thoughts on that, and if that was something that you guys support, we can work on the grant application and bring it back to the board, hopefully, if we can have another meeting before it's due. But that would be something that we'd want to start working on pretty soon, because those are due in September.
This is Mike Kelly. I think we should take the course of action you just described, Amanda. I do have one question. I'd like to know the amount of the grant request for last year, dollar amount, and then if you think it will be more because of the, ongoing, another freeze-thaw cycle's worth of damage, plus the drainage issues you mentioned, would we be looking at a larger grant request in this package?
I'm going to defer to Rick on do you know? I might have to get back to you on that. I don't remember last year's amount, but I know we're going to relook at the estimate. I do anticipate it's likely going to be more money than what was anticipated with the condition that I saw when I looked out there, and I had our city person who does all of our asphalt repair out there with me, and I think it's probably going to be more. We do need to spend some time looking at that estimate. Do you know?
Well, this is Rick. Mike, by way of background, those hangars in the B and C complex were erected and open for business in summer of 2003. There's only been one pavement treatment performed on that pavement, and that was a micro seal slurry somewhere around 2011. So this is an example of deferred maintenance, and it's getting worse. The number, I will give you a ballpark number because I don't have the file in front of me, but it was somewhere around $350,000 to cover the taxi lanes on each side of B and C, the center taxi lane area that exits out to the main apron, and then also covering the taxi lanes on both sides of Complex A. Now, in the past, we have attempted to use our $150,000 FAA entitlement and kind of piecemeal it together when Chuck Souls was airport manager, but the rules have changed, which makes the choice of the KDOT grant a much better arrangement for the city of Lawrence. The FAA has changed their airport improvement program grant criteria, where it used to be they would take and pay their 90% all the way up to the front of the hangar. Now they're backing off 50 feet from the front of the hangar. So we would not get near the bang for the buck if we approach the FAA to use our grant money on this project. As with KDOT, it's 90-10, and we can go with brand new surface all the way up to the front. Trade-off is going to be a little bit higher priced. But with the grants due September 30th, we should have some preliminary numbers for the board to take a look at and then discuss here pretty quickly, because we need to get this package put together. I hope that helps.
It's Mike Kelly. Thank you for that detailed answer.
This is Richard Haig, Chair. Amanda, is the 5-inch wide asphalt crack that you were talking about, was that near the A hangars, or was that B and C?
Was in the furthest, I get them all mixed up, C, yes, this is Amanda. It was in C, the furthest west.
Okay.
There's a pretty big crack going, I can't remember, is it north of C7? I think it was just north of
Right in the-
C7.
The worst one was in the middle.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah, it was in the middle unit.
Okay, because I've known when I've taxied by, all the lanes on both sides of the A hangars have been pretty rough for quite a few years. I didn't know if that was the case, but
Yeah.
it is by the newer stuff, by the
A
newer
is-
hangars.
This is Amanda. A is less cracking and more like spalling, it appears. As I was looking at it, which may actually be worse because you've got pieces coming up. And so I know we painted some of those areas. I haven't been out to see what they actually addressed. I know Bill and I told me that they addressed the most critical areas. There's a lot more pretty large transverse cracks, though, out along B and C.
Okay.
I don't know, I mean, I'm sure those were done at different times, and I don't know why necessarily, but yeah, there's more cracking out there, and they're deep. I mean, you can see they're probably, some of those cracks are probably 12, 18 inches deep all the way through. So those areas are going to need to be patched.
Super. Thank you. Any other comments? Public?
Yeah, on those, you know, a 4-inch wide crack doesn't sound too bad from a nose wheel airplane, but there's a couple of tail wheel airplanes that operate out of those hangars, and a tail wheel on an airplane is about 1.5 inches wide. If it were to fall into one of those cracks, you could get some very, very serious damage to an airplane. And so I'd like to see if we can figure out how to bump that up in priority. So I'd really encourage that for the tenants that are there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, this is Dan Bourne, board member. I was wondering how long would these repairs take?
If we were to get the grant, sorry, this is Amanda.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, this is probably a month-long project if they were to get out there, and if we were to get this work.
I'd say probably, well, again, it's one of those things that, you know, once you start tearing up the concrete, the asphalt out there, who knows what you're going to find underneath there. So, you know, Dan, the best answer, this is Rick again, this is, the best answer to your question is probably, I think we pitched it on a 4 to 6 week spread based on what you find when you start opening up all the cracks and what you got to repair. And then the other thing to remember with the KDOT grant is they operate on a fiscal year of July 1 to June 30th. So if we apply for the grant September 30th, they're going to make a selection late January, early February of all the award recipients across the state, and then the money will become available for construction July 1st of 2021. So we got a ways to hang in there and get through this. So there's probably going to be some intermittent patching and baling wire and duct tape to keep this thing together for a little bit longer. But it's a high priority. And one of the things we did look at several years ago was the taxi lanes for that surround A on both sides, was to beef them up a little bit on the weight-bearing load, because if we ever get to the point where we build additional T-hangars, and on the ALP they are immediately south of the BC complex, there was some discussion of box hangars for maybe small biz jets, and that they would exit out onto the west side, and that we would have a taxi lane that was sized appropriately to handle the small business jet and weight-bearing capabilities as well. So it might be, we may never get to that point with building additional T-hangars at that location, but we may want to consider increasing the weight-bearing a little bit from like 12,000 to 15,000 pounds for an aircraft.
Okay, thanks. I do realize that it's a while off yet, but would all the hangars be closed at once, or would this be kind of a rolling construction?
Well, this is Amanda. I think we're probably that would be discussed much later. You are going to get cheaper costs by allowing them to do it in one phase. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to look at with the total estimate, what we get for the grant. I don't know how they work, but sometimes I know with our KDOT TA grants that we get for other projects, they don't always fund the whole thing. So, so we'll have to look at the grant amount, what the estimates are, and really what makes the most sense. I think we'd all probably agree that if we get enough money to do it all and it's one phase, we're probably going to say, well, that's better than not do, if the option is not doing some of it, or having a short-term pain of, let's get it all done because it's a little bit cheaper that way. I think we'd probably all err towards that, but I think we'll just have to see what happens.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anyone else?
This is Mike Kelly. I'm wondering if in our grant submission for this project, we need to use the pavement condition index type methodology, or does that not even apply in these sort of grant proposals?
This is Amanda. Yeah, we would do that, and actually, I should probably let you guys know, Rick was just out a couple weeks ago with a group that they actually went around the entire city with a vehicle that has this very high-tech camera on it that drives along at about 60 miles an hour, I think, and gets images of the pavement, and then they take it back and analyze it, and they do a PCI rating through that. So the city had contracted to do that throughout the city on all of our streets, and they actually included the airport in that. So Rick went out a couple weeks ago with them when they drove that. So we should be getting updated PCIs out there. I don't know I think the timeline was in the next couple of months, because they obviously are analyzing the entire city. So we should be able to have that, hopefully have that information to be able to use that.
This is Mike Kelly. Thank you for that answer.
Richard Haig, is there anyone else, anybody else online, public, that would like a question or comment? All right.
Mr. Chairman, this is Rick again. Mike, let me expand a little bit on Amanda's comment. The KDOT grant is essentially a two-page application. They have really made it simple, and it's one that how much you want and how you're going to spend it. You don't even have to worry too much about pretty solid engineer estimates. What I have done with other client airports is I have thrown in more of a marketing orientation to show a return on investment by KDOT, and that seems to be something that resonates with the selection committee, because the selection committee is a multifaceted group from KDOT, from all the different sectors. It's not just aviation people, and they go in and they weed through. There will be probably 50 grants for $25–30 million worth of projects, and there's only $7 million in the kitty. So it'll be extremely competitive. So any little edge that we get to show return on investment seems to resonate with them. And so we can use the PCI number, but the fact that we have 30 tenants out there that are getting bumped and bruised on their way out to go fly is, a sad commentary on things, and we need to get these people taken care of as quickly as possible. And then, Dan, to answer your question about staging, we did, when we looked at it under Chuck Soule's administration, when we were using the 150 annual entitlement, we did look at doing one strip of hangars at one time, 1 year, and then moving to the next. But if you like, we can park them all in front of your T-Hangar and then just let them exit out that way to the apron until we're done.
I'll take it under advisement.
All right. This is Richard Haig. Anyone else? Oh,
CARES grant,
Amanda.
sorry.
Yep.
Oh, do you want to move to that?
Go ahead.
I meant to do those up front and then let you guys talk, and I don't want to forget that. But if there was more comment on the KDOT one.
No, that's,
Okay.
we're ready to go.
I didn't want to forget the CARES grant, and I got talking on that and completely forgot. This is Amanda Saheen. I'm sure you guys all saw that the airport was awarded $69,000 through the CARES Act, and that was really just here's your money. I mean, there was no competition. There was nothing. I mean, they literally said, hey, there's going to be this money, and then I think they had a conference call, and the next day they sent an application going, here, it's already filled out for you, you just need to sign it. And I don't know how they came up with the amount, but they used some formula, and they came up with the amount based on,
They did it by airport classification.
yeah.
Regional airports got 69,000.
Oh, did they? Okay. So, so we got $69,000. One of the things that, city staff has been really harping on, and the new director of MSO is he's real big safety driven guy, and it drives him crazy that the gates are open at the airport all the time, because there's a reason that wildlife fence was put in, and it's for the safety of the pilots out there. And the gates are left open all the time, and I understand it's a pain in the butt to close them, because 2 of the 3, you actually have to get out on your way in and open it, then you have to drive in, and then you have to get out of your car and close it. And I understand it's a pain in the butt, but especially that west one where it's located, I mean, there's real potential that wildlife get in. So we do want to prioritize getting those gates automated. So we are working on a, Gary, who's on the call here, for the people that were at the January meeting that was no meeting, we're introduced to Gary Reinheimer, who's an engineer who works in MSO also, but he's he's much smarter at this stuff than I am on electrical and how this all works. So he's working on getting a bid package together so we could get this out to bid and see if we can get those 2 gates automated. So we have already taken it was a pretty quick turnaround on that money, so we've already taken that grant to City Commission, I think on June 2nd, and it's already been signed, and basically we have 4 years to spend it. They do have some limits on what you can spend it on. The way that we went and did it was, if you wanted to use it for development projects, there was a much longer process. So we chose to say, well, we want to use it on, they're letting us consider this O&M because that's how we were going to fund it if we didn't get this grant, was we were going to try to work it into some O&M budget. So since they're letting us call this operation and maintenance to add these gates in, it made the process much simpler through the FAA. And so working on that bid package now. I think Gary's getting close to wrapping it up and getting an estimate for us. There's some challenges on the west side with getting power and such to that gate, but he's been working with Evergy, and I think we're getting close to having a bid package ready. And so we're going to bid that, and hopefully we can get those gates automated. That's the goal with that money, so.
This is Ron Renz from Gutworks and Alligator. Obviously, the west side gate is really one that impacts us a lot. Anything that we can do to help you with that, let us know. I mean, we got some bids to try to do that about a year or so ago, and we all know where that went. But anything we can do to help, we would definitely be in support of that. So we'd be happy to do what we can.
Ron, this is Rick. How about closing the gate?
I'll tell you, the gate is closed right now when I drove through, and I try to do it all the time, and I know the Lifestar guys try, but it's almost impossible. We got
I know.
Garbage people, we got FedEx, we got UPS, there's 3 other hangar tenants, and trying to police that it's virtually impossible. We try. We do as best we can, but as we all know,
it's all right, Ron.
It's not perfect,
it's okay.
and they're open way too much.
Hey, Ron, let's horse trade. If you promise to close the gate all the time, we'll rename the airport Ron Renz International and get customs.
I think it's cheaper for us to put in the automated gate.
Done deal. Done deal. I'll put the powered gate in if you do that, Rick.
Anyone else? This is Richard Haig, Chair. I do have a question for Gary. I don't know if you wanted to go live today or not, but the one question that I was, or change I was wondering about is, as you put in automated gates, there may become a time in the future where we want to have a more secure airport and have security controls at those gates. As you're putting the bid in, would it be possible to, or would it be advantageous to consider wiring to the gates that would allow secured entrances, so more of a keypad and security system, if in the future it became not just a wildlife fence, but a more of a security fence with the bigger operations happening there?
This is Gary Reinheimer with the city. That is an option. My question, I guess the direction I'd receive is we're just doing a push button, and we're doing a push button on both sides because the sensor in the pavement and the asphalt's not in good condition, and those can be troublesome. So the idea was a push button on both sides, but we can make it a keypad. The problem I see off the top of my head with the keypad is everyone knowing what the code is.
Mm-hmm.
Gary,
this is Ron.
Oh, go ahead.
This is Ron Renz with Gutworks and Alligator. To add a keypad is relatively easy, at least with the company that we got quotes from. The keypad was part of the bid, and it was almost cheaper to do a keypad than just a push button. Gary's got a good point about, well, everybody gets the code. Well, nothing is perfect, okay? Any of those would work, whether it's a push button, whether it's a keypad, it doesn't matter. It's good. In most of the systems that we've looked at, even if we don't do the keypad right away, the keypad is kind of standalone, and the button sends an on-off signal to the gate controller, and it's whatever you've got in the box, whether it's a keypad, whether it's a button, whether it's a card reader, whether it's something else. That's almost a standalone option and can be added down the road if you don't do it right away. So that's the ones that we looked at. That's not a big deal. It's an easy thing to add later if we want to do that. And Gary, if you'd like to, if you'd like the names of the companies that we talked to, I'd be happy to send them to you. I know I've sent them to Rick and Richard before, but if you send me an email, I'd be happy to send those to you.
This is Gary Runheimer, city engineer. Yeah, I'll send you an email to get those. And I guess just one last question for the group to consider. How would UPS or anyone else making deliveries know what the code is? Or do we actually put it there on the button?
That's always an issue. And we haven't actually talked to the UPS or the FedEx guys because we were just going to do a button. So the button's easy. The other thing that some airports do is you publish a phone number for the businesses that are there, and then the UPS guy just calls, and then the business opens the gate or something. That's happened as well. So, but yeah, that's a complication that you do with the UPS and the FedEx guy. You've got to figure out how to deal with that.
Yeah. This is Richard Hay again. Yes, that's just kind of something I wanted to throw out there in the event that the security part of it would be more important. And if that part came, then the delivery drivers would have to be part of the security system as we move forward. But as the airport is right now, it is just a wildlife fence, and the gates just need to be closed to help do their job. So thank you, guys. Okay, move on to item number 7, which is the Air Classic Race 2021.
This is Amanda Saheen. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that I was contacted by the Air Race Classic that they are going to come through Lawrence again. I guess they came through in 2006. And they're going to come through Lawrence again next year if their COVID is not an issue. They had to cancel this year's. I think they're doing some online virtual stuff this year in place of it. But the goal is for them to stop in Lawrence. The dates next year are June 22nd to 25th. We would be the 6th stop, so she said most racers would likely be here that Wednesday or Thursday. I guess for those, I don't know if most people are aware, it's a women's cross-country race. And they fly from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. I believe she said they would basically they kind of do a flyby as they come in for time and then they land. A lot of airports have kind of a small little, setup, reception for the pilots. She said not required, but, it's what a lot of them do. Some would stay the night probably in Lawrence based on what time of day they landed here. So I really just wanted to give everybody a heads up and let you know so that as we kind of go through these next few meetings, it's something that we can start talking about, maybe setting up a group to work on, setting up some events for that. They also sent me some, I don't know if you guys can see this, some of this year's books that they just released. They sent me a bunch of these. It's kind of odd because you're all not here for me to hand them to, but if you would like me to have one put in the mail to you, or you want to stop by, we can even get some out to the airport to Lloyd. If you'd want to stop by there, I've got probably 20 of them, 15 of them maybe. And it just kind of shows what they do for each airport, and they kind of do a little, I believe, there's a little profile on each racer. And so it's something that kind of markets the airport a little bit. And we'll be talking to them some more as it gets closer, but maybe at the next meeting, we can talk about setting up a little subcommittee or something that can meet outside of this group that would be able to help with any events for that.
This is Richard Hagan. The Women's Pilot Organization, the 99s, have been very instrumental at the Lawrence Airport, helping us with different activities, painting the compass rose, doing a lot of different things. In fact, we were on their list to repaint the compass rose again, but we were waiting on doing some micro seal before they did that. But yeah, this race, and if we can set up some hospitality events for them when they're coming in, I think it'd show them that we care about what they do and what they bring to our airport as well. Good. Yes, Clancy?
You're muted.
There, let me get that. I have some experience with running timing stops for air races and as well as flying air races. What the airport generally needs to be aware of is that the flybys for timing are done at roughly 200 feet AGL, and there'll be lots of FAA NOTAMs about that kind of activity. But they also buy a lot of gas because it's all at full throttle. So keep that in mind. It's a good moneymaker too.
There you go. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Let's go to the T-Hangar tenant update.
All right, this is Amanda Saheen. You guys are going to get sick of hearing that. But we wanted to give a little bit of an update, try to start updating the board maybe a little more regularly on what's going on in the T-Hangars. So Rick's been instrumental in helping me manage this process. It's a lot more work, property management is, than I realized, just with the turnover and everything out there. You know, tenants are really pretty low maintenance once they're in place, but it's the turnover and trying to get the units rented and things like that that's definitely time consuming. So Rick's been doing a lot of showings. I think he's going to be a realtor next, but he's been doing a lot of showings out there at the airport. And so we've got some empty hangars right now. We've got some people in the process of signing leases. There's kind of a lot going on. So Rick's provided kind of this update here, which I'm not going to read through it, but it was attached to the agenda. We did lose a couple of different tenants. One was a corporate entity, and that was really more about they were taking their aircraft elsewhere for a project, kind of longer term. They may be back at some point. We also had some people due to everything going on with COVID. That was another issue, or another one sold the plane. So things like that, nothing where it's been anything, I guess, wrong with Lawrence Airport or that they've left for any reason related that, you know, within our control. We've also had, you know, some new tenants move in, and Al Stuber actually just told us that he sold one of his planes, and so he's now going down to one hangar. So we've got some people looking at his hangar, trying to get someone in there for him to release him out of his lease. We do have one of them in B that just opened up. That's the corporate entity. And we've got one of the tenants in A going to move over to that hangar who's been wanting. We have quite a few A tenants who want to move to B or C as things open up. So we're kind of trying to facilitate that also. So there's a process, and it's pretty time intensive, but we're working through it, and hopefully, I believe right now, technically, we have one vacant hangar, correct, Rick?
Yes, and yeah, this is Rick. Yes, we will have one vacant hangar, and if we get lucky with a prospect here in the next couple of days when they come forward and want to be put on the list, they could probably slide right in. So we'll have an immediate vacancy. So if you know somebody who's got a lonely airplane that wants to be at a good airport. Also, while you guys were taking a vacation from meetings and stuff, earlier in the year we conducted a statewide hangar rental survey. And just, I don't have the details here, but the good news is Lawrence is not at the top of the rate list, nor are we at the bottom. We're probably about 75% of the monthly rate. around the state. And that included all the metropolitan statistical area airports, and then some small airports here around the region, and a couple over in the Missouri side of Kansas City that attract a lot of attention as well. So we're right where we need to be. We're not getting too many complaints about price or our practices and policies, and we get lots of compliments about the way the hangars look, which is an easy sell at that point.
And we do have a few people on, this is Amanda, waiting list, but they're people like kind of waiting to buy planes. They're maybe in the fall. So we've got a waiting list, I guess technically, but they're not people ready to pull the trigger right this moment. So I think we'll be able to continue to fill these vacancies and hopefully not have things vacant for very long when they do come up. So there is a little bit of a process when, getting everything signed and notarized. And so there is some time there where we might have a vacancy for a month or two, but hopefully we're able to keep them mostly full. So we just wanted to provide that update. You guys have any questions?
Any questions or comments from board members or public? Okay. We'll move on to number 9, the FBO report. You up for it, Lloyd?
How about that? Can you hear me? Lloyd Hetrick with Hetrick Air Service. I think the only thing I probably would update is of course, with everything going on and everybody shut down, we just literally are not seeing any transient. We've been booking our fuel sales since 97, I believe it is. I started in 83 over here, and I don't even think 83 was that bad. But ever since we've been booking it, our fuel sales for the month of April totaled 7,100 gallons, and half of that was 100 low end. So it just died off, but we are probably the only thing keeping us going right now this month is more our group of aircraft owners are now where they're able to get out and go places to catch up on their travel that they weren't able to do in April. So our jet and 2 Kinney Airs have been traveling quite a little bit this month anyway. So that's obviously helping us from some fuel sales standpoint. We do have some training going on, the best we can. We're just keeping those selective who we use, and we're using the mask and cleaning the aircraft after every flight. So we're able to keep that part of it going. Maintenance has been steady, but it just doesn't pay the bills. But I think we'll start opening up, so we'll start seeing some transit. Hopefully, the university opens up, and we're just another month down the road. We're going to be shutting down the airport again. So just bad timing. Probably from our standpoint, the sooner the runway rehab starts, the better, because we're just not seeing the traffic anyway. I can't reiterate enough with the hangar. We'd love to get started on that second hangar sooner than later before we get into the winter months again. We've got actively still working at least 2 or 3 more large aircrafts that will come onto the field if we can put the memberships or ownership groups together. And so we've had a lot of activity going that route. So hopefully we can keep moving our business ahead with the one, even towards the 135. We're just about there on the Kinney Air part of it for the 135. And so we'll see some activity there hopefully in the near future as well.
That's good. Do we have any questions for Lloyd while he's up?
I've got some notes of encouragement. I just read today, NBAA, the National Business, this is Ron Renz with Gutworks. NBAA issued a report that they expect that business flying is going to increase 300% over April. So that's could be encouraging for you, Lloyd. Another thing that I've been in talk to several clients that are looking at how do we travel in COVID environment? They don't want to take the airlines. Driving isn't practical. So there's a good possibility that business aviation is really going to increase here in the next month as the country opens up, because businesses and people need and want to travel. So that's good and encouraging news. But is it going to happen? Lloyd, I hope it does. I think it will. And so.
So Lloyd, this is Don Kinney. I've got a question. I'm not sure whether it's a question for you or Amanda or whatever. Is there anything that has been done in terms of the terminal itself or your facilities there to, market, change, keep people further apart and seating, pilots lounge? In other words, are we, responding appropriately in terms of the terminal for the COVID-19 stuff for passengers, pilots, whoever?
Yeah. Well, I think what we're doing is we posted, just like everybody else, I think, where we got posted the social distancing marking. We're wearing masks when we do the flight instruction. If we're close proximity, we would wear them. We pretty much can keep our 6 feet with the counter and everything. Again, we're not seeing transient, so from a transient standpoint, it hasn't really been an issue, but and we've got hand cleaners we put throughout the building. We've got we're cleaning, like I say, we're cleaning all the aircraft in between flights to keep those there. So I'd say we're doing the best we can with what's posted and what's recommended from our standpoint.
Restrooms, so on, really some extra restrooms.
Well, the city does the cleaning. I do know once it's hit, we make sure that they're out there on a regular basis to clean it, but it's definitely not daily, I know. From that standpoint, we probably could slack some with it, I'm guessing too.
This is Richard Haig. Lloyd, I do have one question on the 135 operation, since the public's watching this on different channels. Have you gotten the aircraft on 135 operations that different people in Lawrence can come and actually charter your larger aircraft yet, or are those still kind of on hold? How's your 135 certificate coming?
Well, I quit trying to give dates because we're just so close it could happen anytime. But I think we're about as far as we can go with FAA. We do have some snags with TSA with those larger aircrafts. We've got to go through background checks, the no-fly list, those kind of things that we haven't been accustomed to with the smaller aircraft. So we've been trying to work that for better than 6 weeks with TSA, and with everything going on, the communication is just very, very slow. But we're so close, I could come back next week and say we're ready. But I could be saying this 4 weeks from now. I just don't, we're at the mercy of a couple of FAA, not so much FAA as the TSA right now. All our pilots have been through their schooling. They've been through the check pilot, the check rides, the training, the documents are all done. I understand they're in the mail for our op specs. We already got the Keen Air on the certificate. So, I mean, we're 99% there. It's just bad timing with everything else hitting. But I would hope within 2 weeks we're there.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. There's Richard Egg. Thank you, Lloyd. Look forward to those guys getting up in the air. Okay. The next is discuss elections for chairperson and vice chair. We felt like this meeting may not be the best one to try and do elections via Zoom, that maybe we could have a live meeting next time. And one of the plans that we would have to have on the agenda would be to elect officers. And so hopefully we can all get together and establish a new chair for the year and a new vice chair and keep the board going in the right direction.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
If, this is Amanda Saheen, if in the meantime, if you are interested in being chair or vice chair, please send me an email, so when we do publish the next agenda, we can notify all the board members. We'll basically make it public, hey, these are the people who expressed interest. We find with some of our other boards that tends to work better so everybody's not sitting here just looking at each other. You kind of know out of the gate who's interested in it. So if you are willing or interested in doing that, please send me an email, just me, not everybody else, and I will make sure that information is published when we publish the next agenda.
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Mike Kelly. Amanda, are there any term limitations?
This is Amanda. I do not believe there is. I read the bylaws and, because I was making sure we weren't, that we didn't need to have it at this board. We intended to have the elections in January. And I believe it just states that it's a one-year term or whenever you schedule elections. So we're kind of in that time now. And then I don't believe there's any term limitations on re-electing the same person multiple times, so.
There was this is Don Kinney. There was a discussion, it was September's meeting, about some term limits, and I just wasn't sure where that all stood. So anyway, there was a discussion about it. Ordinance versus bylaws, there were some discrepancies. Amanda, you could always go back and see where that all went. I don't know. I'm not sure.
This is
But there
Amanda. Are
was
you
a
talking
discussion.
term limits of being on the board or of being chair?
Well, I was talking about being on the board, I
Okay,
believe.
yes, there is on being on the board, but I believe it's 2 terms, but it does state that there can be accommodations made, and so I should probably give that update too, that we got to about probably April, when we found out we weren't going to have the April meeting because of COVID, and realized Richard, being the chair, was one of the people who had an expiring term, along with Bill Ackerley, along with Dan, I believe were the ones. And we had nobody on the list for being interested in being on the board. So we were very quickly going to be at 3 people, which does not meet the bylaws. Their terms were expiring May 31st. So I reached out to each of those. I believe Bill was the only one who actually did not have the max amount of terms. He was not interested in continuing. So both Dan and Richard said that they would be willing to continue if the mayor so, if that was her choice. So I made the recommendation at that point so that we could stay within the bounds of our bylaws, since we could not have a meeting at that time, to recommend that Richard and Dan be reappointed, understanding they already had met their term limits, but given the situation with COVID and having no one else interested, we were really kind of in a bind to even be able to have a meeting again after May 31st. So she did reappoint those 2. So we are now at 5, which is the minimum per the bylaws. We would like to get up to 7, which is the max per the bylaws. That way we don't get into this situation again, because next year we're going to have another 3 that are going to be, up for reappointment or for somebody else to come in. So that's why we are asking the mayor at this point to consider the additional 2 people who have since. We've kind of, I guess, went and pounded the ground and tried to get some more interest and have the two people interested. And so we're hoping to get them appointed, so we sit at 7. That way we don't get into this situation again.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, this is Richard Haig. So, okay. Let's move on to the final agenda item, which is the next meeting. Our tentative next meeting is July 16th, which is a month pretty much from today. Is that a meeting that'll be productive, or is that meeting we could you guys want to move till toward the end of August or early September when we have more to discuss? Or the 16th is going to be close to when the Runway Rehab project is going to be decided, hopefully have some answers from the city, and can move forward if there's any items that we need to discuss as far as the Runway project goes.
Well, I do have a question. This is Don Kinney. So, Amanda, you've mentioned several times that maybe the next time we have a meeting, we can do this in person. I don't know, and so I'll just speak for myself anyway. I'm not too wild about getting together with a group of people in a small meeting room, just from being exposed to COVID-19. So I've got a medical reason not, and so that doesn't necessarily mean that I can't either join by through video or don't have to be there either. So, but
Yeah, and this is Amanda Scene. I'm not sure yet. They have not released the plan yet for if the city's even going to allow in-person meetings in July. We're not certain how that's going to work. If they do have them, there may still be that virtual option. I assume if we do have it and it's in person, it's not going to be in that small room. There's probably people, though, who still, even in a bigger room, don't feel comfortable, and that's understandable. So unfortunately, those decisions are being made kind of for all, they're trying to treat all advisory boards and pretty equally. So I may not know that for a little bit, what the plan is, and if it does have to be, say, in the city commission room here so we can have more space, then we get into scheduling issues with trying to make sure that the room's vacant. If we have to do a Zoom meeting, we've got to make sure the room's vacant and that we can have the capabilities to broadcast. So there's a lot kind of in flux. So I don't know if you guys want to say, let's plan it, and if by July 1 we don't have any guidelines on things changing, we push it, or what you guys think?
This is Richard
This is
Haig.
Mike Kelly. I'm okay with going ahead on the 16th of July, and I'm agnostic about whether we do it by Zoom or in person. I believe the governor of Kansas, Governor Kelly, no relation to me, is going to have a press conference tomorrow at 4 p.m., and I think she'll probably announce some things that might give some guidance to our county commissioners and to our city leaders as far as how she wants to see the public health posture going through the summer. So I think we ought to listen to what the governor has to say, and then our city leaders will tell us kind of how we're going to have to operate.
Yeah, this is Dan Bourne, board member. I'd be in favor of keeping our July 16th date. We can keep it as a Zoom meeting if necessary, but I think we got to meet around the time of making decisions about, the airport renovation. I think it'd be important for us to be in contact at that time.
Any other comments? Okay, this is Richard Haig. I do believe that, out of respect for board members that are very conscious and vulnerable to COVID, that we do still look at the Zoom option. So if a normal meeting isn't safe and productive for someone, we need to consider that. So I would say as we get closer to the 16th, Amanda will look into it, and we may be doing elections through Zoom instead of in face-to-face like we normally would. And but we'll like Mike said, let's just take it by ear and we'll see. So if everybody's okay with that, we'll keep the date of July 16th. And hopefully, since we know this far out, maybe Amanda can get our name on the city commission room early in case we do Zoom, or even if we don't do Zoom and we just meet here. Then we have the room set aside, so if we can get our foot in the door first, we can do that maybe to secure our spot. So, anybody else's thoughts on that? So, I guess one housekeeping question would be, since the date's already set on the 16th, do we need to take any action or vote on keeping that date?
No, I think we're good, because you guys already voted in December for that date, so.
All righty.
Yeah, it's your fault.
It's all my fault. I will take responsibility. Okay, this is Richard Haig again. So with those agenda items taken care of, that's the end of the normal business that we had scheduled for tonight. Does anybody have comments regarding the airport or policy that they would like to address before we adjourn?
This is Gary Runheimer with the city. It looks like commission room is reserved already on July 16th at this time. So I don't know if we want to talk about other dates or...
Let me look at it and see, this is Amanda, let me look at it and see what it's reserved for and all of that. If it's not something that is a public meeting and it's just reserved, then we might be able to switch it. We might also, Wednesday nights may seem a little more open, so I guess, let me just ask, if we had to switch it to the 15th, just so I know, if that's the option for it to be open, is that good with everyone?
This is
I'm
Mike
fine.
Kelly. The 15th is fine.
Thanks, thank you, Gary, for checking that. I'll look into it. If we need to move it, I'll prioritize the 15th.
As board members, does anybody have a conflict with the 15th? Okay,
I'm good. This is Monte. I'm good with the 15th.
okay. So we'll plan on the 16th if the room becomes available. If not, we'll adjust to the 15th.
That's fine.
Any other business before the board tonight? All right.
This is Ron Renz with GoWorks. I'd just like to comment that I've been doing a lot of Zoom stuff and holding a lot of Zoom webinars, and this meeting, from my standpoint, has worked quite well. So I don't see any problem with doing Zoom meetings. I think they work pretty good. I know the city's done a lot of them as well, so good job, everybody.
Thank you, Ron. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn. Mike Kelly.
Okay.
I second, Dan Bourne.
Okay. Motion by Mike Kelly, seconded by Dan Bourne. Monte, second. Are you in favor? We have to do vote.
favor.
One in favor. Dan?
Aye.
Don?
Yes.
Mike?
Aye.
And I am aye, so 5-0, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Clancy? Ron?